Hello.
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 Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
The Empire State Building was bathed in blue light in honor of Old Blue Eyes. And his second home, Las Vegas, dimmed the lights on the main strip while the city's casino stopped all gambling for 1 minute.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. That most people know that I've been a gay man all of my life, and that it's only been in recent times that it's an issue that I feel comfortable to address. An issue that has been with me ever since recognizing my own sexuality.
It's 1998, but in my mind it's still 1997. I'm allowed to smoke until 2 a.m.
Bill Hartman, who gained fame on Saturday Night Live, was found shot dead in his home.
Hi, and welcome to the High Fives podcast. How's it going, Justin?
It's going great, Mike. I thought you were going to blow that one again. This is the sixth take of Mike trying to introduce the podcast. I'm doing great, Mike.
Well,
thanks for having me back. This might be the last episode if I keep critiquing your hosting abilities.
No, I don't think anybody else wants to do this with me, so you're kind of just stuck with it. So you could just do what you want. You could pretty much tell me to fuck off, and you're still going to come back, because unless you don't want to, this is going to be awkward. Welcome to our little podcast for those listening. Hope you guys enjoyed last episode, and I did take notes, and we're going to try to shorten it up a little bit, and my intro won't be as long as last time. I guess it went quite long.
Well, there's no Jurassic Park movie that came out, so we're going to save at least 20 minutes of talking right there.
Yeah, it's a bit till Jurassic Park 3 comes out, right? I don't know when Jurassic Park 3 came out.
It's happening again, Mike. Done. We're done with Jurassic Park.
I'm sorry.
For now.
I just got excited, and once I started thinking about those dinosaurs. So we're continuing with our year theme, and this year we're doing 98, which is kind of a pivotal year for us since we both graduated at that ages, both of us, I guess. Hey.
Yeah, that's crazy to think. I was at a work thing, and we're talking about OJ and like what everyone was doing, and people were like, "I wasn't even born yet." I'm like, "How is this possible?" Like, that was
not even born yet. Oh yeah. God, we're that old, eh? Instead of harping on old things, what have you been listening to this past month, Justin?
I think I mentioned this last time. It just seems like we're in this constant period where little bits of an album start to come together, and it started off as like one or two singles, and then there'll be like an EP, and you're like, is that it? Is there going to be more to come? But I was happy to see that Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties put out a full-length album just a few weeks ago, which is absolutely phenomenal. I've listened to it so many times over the past few weeks. Definitely, like, give it some ear space. It's well deserving of it. Really liking the sound and the complexities and how much of that band has like a shape to the music. So I'd love to know how we arrived at like this whole persona of Aaron West, because it's not him. And it'll be interesting because they're touring this summer too, as is the Wonder Years. And it'd be really cool to see both those shows and just be like, see how different, like specifically he is as a singer or as a like frontman for both those bands. And if it's like a different like kind of personality for one band versus the other.
Is it the same tour? Like it's like a Wonder Years and Aaron West tour, or are there two separate tours?
Two separate tours. Yeah,
okay.
Two separate tours.
I find it funny too, because I believe he also has a solo album, which is even kind of weirder. Like that you would have a solo album, Aaron West, and then Wonder Years.
Yeah, that seems to have a lot going on.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, so that's one I've really been enjoying. Another one that sort of came out of left field for me, and I maybe wouldn't have normally picked this up or given it much time, but I've listened to it a couple times now, and I'm actually quite liking it. And it's the new Sum 41 record. It's very like what you would expect from Sum 41, even 20 years after kind of they released their first record and toured and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a really good record. I think they've really put a lot of like heart and soul and effort into it, and it's their last one, and it's a weird phenomena to put out an album, go on a worldwide tour, and then like make it very clear that you're done with it and you're breaking up. But I think they did a really great job on the record. And I was actually listening to an interview with the lead singer, whose name just totally I forgot. And he's just like, he said it's like the best record they've ever done. What is the guy's name?
I don't know. Derek? No.
Derek, yeah, Derek Whitby. Anyways, this one sort of caught me off guard. I was quite listened to it more than I thought I would, and liked it more than I thought I would. So that's the new Sum 41, and the third one that's a bit of a slow burn but growing on me is the new Modern Life is War record that came out. I like this band quite a bit. Some of their stuff more than others, but this one seems to really kind of just pick up where they left off and just kind of chugs along really nicely. So have been enjoying that one as well.
When did that one come out? I didn't even catch that one.
Within the last 3 weeks, maybe about a month ago. Yeah.
Oh, crazy! That's awesome. I like them.
Yeah, they've put out some really good stuff over the last number of years, and if you like anything else that they've done, you'll really like this album. So
excellent. Is that 3? Oh, you only did 3. Wow, you're getting lazy. There's not even a throwback album. Come on, Justin.
Well, normally I do. So I was thinking about my throwback album, and it came up in the chat a little bit, and it was the first Third Eye Blind album, which I've gone back and listened to a number of times, and it's super good. Like, I absolutely missed it when it came out, didn't listen to him, didn't really give him any time of day besides what you'd hear on the radio. But going back and listening to that album, the songs that aren't like their big singles are really good, and even some of the other ones that were can't say that word today. That were singles are really good songs, like Jumper and How It's Going to Be, they're really great songs. So I've actually quite enjoyed going back and listening to that.
I checked it out. I would have never listened to it when it came out, and probably would have never picked it up. And it's shockingly good. I'll agree with you. Like, I wasn't expecting to like it the way I did. So yeah, I guess sometimes being snobby doesn't pay off. 20 years later. Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Sorry for forcing you to list a fourth one just to conform, but instead I'll just go into my albums, and yeah.
We'll just leave it right there then.
So I've been listening to this list of 4 kept changing because, one, I was on vacation, so I had more time to listen to music, and then I got sick and I didn't listen to anything, and then I started getting bored in my room and listened to way too much stuff. So this list changed a lot, but this is what I settled on. The first one is the Reflectors, Going Out of Fashion. This is the Reflectors' 3rd album. And if you're into the whole modern power pop sound, then the Reflectors are at the top of the heap. This album's a lot of the same as the first 2 albums, but they've increased the punk element to it, I think. It's a little bit more gritty. Works out fantastic. 10 out of 10 would turn this one up loud. Justin, you probably would not like this album. Next one is a band called The Pill and their album Hollywood Smile. I'm honestly not even sure how I stumbled upon this album. I think it was in a blog, or it could have been in a NyQuil haze, but I keep coming back to it. They're a band from Frankfurt, Germany. So I'm usually really hit or miss with that kind of like 80s hardcore punk sound, but The Pill knock it out of the park. And because it's female fronted, it sounds a little bit different and a little bit new. I could see this band exploding if they got a little bit more hype. Again, probably not an album you'd love, Justin. But 0 for 2. Third one is John Moreland's album Visitor. And this is kind of more of a return to a simplistic style, and he knocks it out of the park. Lyrically, this album is as strong as they come. It's very political. If you're a fan of that sound, I can't see why you wouldn't like this album. And finally, I decided to steal your idea and go with a throwback for this last pick because it's kind of a cool idea, and B, this one really was because of the sudden passing of Hepcat vocalist Greg Lee, and it had me going back into their catalog. So the album's Right on Time by Hepcat. I've been a huge fan of Hepcat ever since I heard them on the Glory Days soundtrack, which, saying now, seems like a really weird way to discover a band like Hepcat. But that's how I did find them. I always thought they were cool because in a sea of like 90s third wave ska punk bands, they leaned heavy into traditional ska and still somehow were like lumped in with those bands. And I thought they always did such a good job of it and continued to. Both Right on Time and Push and Shove are mainstays in my record collection, especially once it starts getting warm outside. It's really sad that he's gone. And I say, do yourself a favor and put this album on and enjoy it.
Hey, man, this is Dad, man. This is dynamite, man. The whole thing is out of sight. It's like scientific, man. It's really great. Hepcat should go all the way. There's no doubt. It's really on time. It's beautiful, man. Just great. The whole thing. It's beautiful.
The year's 1998, and Mike, as you alluded to, it was a big year for us. It was high school graduation for us, the majority of our friends, and that last sort of few months of '98, and going through the summer, and then people starting university, and a couple people moving away, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it really felt like just a monumental year, and even just like thinking about 1998, I have so many immediate thoughts and feelings and memories and all that kind of stuff that come up, because I think it's just like one of those, like, that was a year for our lives.
Are you sure it's just not because Windows 98 was released? I'm pretty sure that was the highlight, right?
Yeah, that's what this podcast is about, right? We're talking about the top releases and patches from Windows 98.
Yeah. I mean, everyone will. I bet you there's a fucking podcast about that.
I'm
Anyway.
sure. I think it's probably hosted by Clippy.
Fuck. That was a solid pull. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for us. I mean, yeah, 98's like such a pivotal year because of that. And I assume whatever year people do graduate, that's a big thing. So the music and the memories are really implanted into your lexicon and whatnot, which made doing the list very difficult, I thought. I don't know about you, but narrowing down 98 seemed very difficult. I mean, they've all been difficult, but 98 seemed especially difficult for me. But let's get into some of the other interesting historical things and pop culture that happened in 98. That I found was interesting because the other 2 years we did had way more written about it online compared to 98. So it wasn't as, I guess, pop culturally significant. Like I said, Windows 98 was released. That's a big one. Bill Clinton denied having sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky, which was a big thing. I'm sure you guys, that was probably like fodder for late night comedians for about 20 years.
Oh, this is probably like made Jay Leno's career.
What else? Lollapalooza died. It was the first year they said they weren't going to do it anymore, which is, I guess, is kind of like the end of the era of grunge for a bit there. And I know they do Lollapalooza now, but like they said they couldn't sell enough tickets or get a headliner, which I think's funny.
I guess that kind of makes sense, because they were very much like, if I think about like Lollapalooza, it is like, it's Alice in Chains and Smashing Pumpkins and Jane's Addiction and like very grunge heavy. And none of that made it into the late 90s by, 97, 98. I mean, Smashing Pumpkins were definitely still around. They were putting out, I feel like that's right around the time that the double album came out, or fairly close.
It must be close. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I kind of think like, yeah, to me, Lollapalooza signifies the whole Seattle grunge sound. But I feel like maybe this is just the new Lollapalooza, I feel like it turned into kind of like a Coachella thing, where it was just like everybody that was popular was playing it, and then it just faded away. And like, I guess kind of off topic, did you see any of the Coachella stuff this weekend?
I did not. No.
I watched the No Doubt set, which was really cool. I thought it was interesting to see how excited I was for that, which I didn't think I would be. I tried to watch the Sublime with Not Rome for a bit, and that was kind of lame. That whole story is just too funny for me, because it seems kind of cheesy to have his son doing it. I don't know why that bothers me. I don't even like the band. It bothers me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I still, from time to time, will enjoy listening to old Sublime. I have zero desire whatsoever to see new Sublime with or without Rome or with his son or whatever. But
yeah, it's pretty weird when bands do that sort of thing. Like in 1998, when Van Halen had Gary Cherone join the band.
The darkest days of Van Halen.
Did you like what I did there? I set that whole segue up just to take a shot at Van Halen.
Yes, and specifically Van Cherone or whatever they were called. Like, it was so bad. Like, I think even on the Van Halen Greatest Hits Volume 1, which is also funny because they never released Volume 2, they don't have any of the stuff they did with him. It was like, it's all just Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth stuff, obviously, because, stick with the moneymakers.
Speaking of moneymakers, the Beastie Boys put out Hello Nasty, and they were one of the first bands to post MP3s at the time on their website, which is very interesting to me. Pretty fly for a white guy became a thing. Once again, confusing my love for the Offspring.
Yeah, I don't I get why the band writes stuff like that. And I feel like we even talked about it on one of the previous episodes, because their good stuff is so much better.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, I can't tell if it's a joke to them or if they're like, no, this works. This is great. I feel like they wouldn't do more than one, but they've done. Anyway, I could go on and on about that.
It's kind of like Marvel pumping out shitty Spider-Man movies.
Okay.
It's hard to argue with, like, they've got to know this movie sucks, but at the same time, they also know that it's going to make $1 billion. So pump out another
I
shitty
feel
Spider-Man
targeted.
movie.
I feel really, really targeted here. Well, all good things do come to an end. Like Seinfeld. The last Seinfeld aired. At the time, I thought that episode was terrible. But now when I watched it, I think it was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really good finale and a way to bring back all these insane characters, one-off characters that they dedicated an episode to or built an episode around, came back and they were in, like, all of them in the season finale. I thought it was
like
super
when they did it, I was like, eh. And I mean, I think we all were like, oh, they're just going to have Jerry and Elaine get together or someone's going to move. And they just didn't do anything. They just left it open. Like they literally could start Seinfeld tomorrow.
Life went on for them.
Did you catch the end of Curb Your Enthusiasm? Or do you watch Curb?
I haven't. No, I'm about 2 seasons behind on it. But do really want to catch up. And
one of the funny things about that is, like, now you see pictures of people watching that episode in Times Square. That's also, like, just insane to think that people would sit outside to watch the finale of a TV show.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Now you just watch it on your phone, I guess. But Phil Hartman was murdered, which is the death of a pretty important comedian, I guess. Also, you didn't never get to hear Troy McClure again.
Mm-hmm. And so many other characters.
So many.
That was a bizarre story.
Yeah,
too.
It's super bizarre. Other famous people that died were Tammy Wynette, Sonny Bono.
Hang on, I thought you said famous.
Come on, Tammy Wynette's famous.
For I literally don't know who that is.
She'd be a famous country singer, like Stand By Your Man. Dude, if you ever want to watch an interesting thing, you should watch Tales from the Road or Tales from the Bus. It's done by the guy that does King of the Hill, and it's about, like, the country music stars, and her story is fucking insane. They lived way more of a rock star life than any heavy metal rock stars. Carl Perkins and Frank Sinatra died that year.
So one famous person and a few other people.
Carl Perkins. You don't know who Carl Perkins is either, I'm guessing. Blue Suede Shoes. He wrote that. He started, like, that whole, or was, like, significant in the whole rockabilly scene.
Okay.
Like pre-Elvis. And Sonny Bono, I'm sure you know from the Beavis and Butthead song, I Got You, Babe.
that's right, yeah.
And Frank Sinatra, I like a lot, so I feel insulted that you.
He was the one celebrity.
Oh, I thought Phil Hartman was the one celebrity.
That was the joke.
This is the year that Mark McGuire hit some dingers and broke records, forever hiding the horrible truth.
And clean too. Like,
yeah, sure.
Nothing suspicious about those.
Movie-wise, American History X came out. Something About Mary.
That's, like, one of my favorite movies. American
Makes
History
sense.
X. We have so much to talk about.
Armageddon. And I felt like there was, like, a trend of movies that came out with, like, the world ending due to natural disasters at this time. I feel like there was just a shitload of those kind of movies, but the only one I could think of was Armageddon. Maybe I just made it up in my head.
There's another one that's the same story,
like,
as
meteors
Armageddon.
hitting the Earth or something.
Yeah. It's almost like the studios had, like, bad leaks or something in them, because, like, for sure there was, like, Volcano and Dante's Inferno or something like that came out at the same time, and, like, both shitty movies. They could have just put them together and made one. And there's another one that's like that, where it was like, this is the same movie in 2 different studios, 2 different casts, everything.
Yeah, okay. That's the way I remembered it in my head too, but then I couldn't remember any of the names except Armageddon. So Saving Private Ryan, The Truman Show, Half Baked, which I just saw they made a sequel, which I think seems unnecessary.
Really?
One of my favorites, Dirty Work, came out, which does hold up, and I'll stand by it. It's so good.
Oh, for sure it does.
Norm Macdonald classic. Rob Halford came out as gay in the least shocking thing. Actually, it was shocking. But also, when you look back at it, you're like, yeah.
When you look at, like, the signs were there.
And good on him.
The side note on that, interestingly enough, was because they just put out a new
which is phenomenal
album. But I remember reading out about, like, when he came out and how much, like, support he had for it, and, like, he, I think, had a little bit of trepidation about, like, how would the metal community receive this, and he said it was so unbelievably welcoming, and be like, yeah, man, that's totally cool, just keep writing bangers. And were like there was never like a
Yeah, I think
big pushback or
I
anything
think
like
that's
that.
something
It
that's
was just
cool
like,
about subcultures like metal or punk or whatever, is like, even though on the outside it might not seem that sometimes people are accepting, the vast majority are outsiders that like that kind of music. So when something is different, they aren't, even if they don't totally understand it, they aren't as judgy, right?
yeah, I think that's actually a great point, right? Just yeah, you probably find yourself into like things like especially through the 70s and 80s, like into heavy metal as an outcast, as an outsider, as a sort of it's very counterculture.
And one thing, just wrapping it all up, I thought one thing about 98, just going through the music that was popular at the time, I feel like this is a big shift where pop made a comeback, like alternative and like that sort of world was kind of pushed back into the corner. Like it was no longer acceptable to like some of the stuff that was coming out, like for example grunge or like even punk or whatever, or any of that stuff it was less acceptable. And we saw the rise of like traditional boy bands again, and hip hop becoming more pop music, and just rock getting pushed back for a bit, which happens, I think, in pop music. It's cyclical kind of like, but I feel like 98 was like because you had like Britney Spears come out and like
Yeah,
like
I think
those
first like Backstreet Boys album came out, like Will Smith,
Lauryn Hill,
future president Will Smith. Yeah, Lauryn Hill would have been right around that time. I feel like even like things like Jamiroquai, which is not typical pop music, but like very like super heavy radio play and all that kind of stuff. Like it was probably like the heyday for radio, pop radio, rock radio, or not rock radio, but pop radio or top 40 kind of stuff. And then MTV and Much
exactly.
Music were absolutely huge.
And then
like
I think we move into the digital age, and it like quickly whips back to like people being able to discover all sorts of things again. But 98, I just felt like if I like just going through, I was like, okay, like you weren't going to hear, like even let's say like Smashing Pumpkins, you might not hear that on the radio again in a pop. You might hear it on a classic rock station, but maybe weren't going to hear it on your top 100 like you would have like 2 years before or something.
For sure.
That's basically it for 98 that I could think of. It's probably too much, but again, it didn't seem as eventful worldwide as some of the other years. No rappers were killed, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Not yet.
No holograms were recreated.
I don't know if you had anything else, thoughts on 98. That's about it.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. Lots of things happening around the world, but more specific to the world of punk rock. 1998 was a huge year. I think there was so much stuff here. Mike, you touched on it. It was really hard to cut this down to 5 albums. There are so many things that came out this year that I could listen to and still listen to over and over and over again. So let's jump right into it. My first record came out on June 30th, 1998. So like, what a time. Like, high school was done. We're coming into summer. Released on Epitaph Records. The band is Rancid. The album is Life Won't Wait. I know there's a lot of debate, maybe just in our circle of friends or maybe around the podcast, about like if this is Rancid's best album. For me, it is. I think it's their most like complete, comprehensive album. That's not just a collection of really good songs like Let's Go or And Out Come the Wolves. I think this album really feels like it was written to be complete, start to finish. There's some nods to kind of more traditional Rancid songs like Something in the World Today or Blood Clot, which is, basically the kickoff to the album. Those are kind of more within their wheelhouse, but there's some really good departures to like songs like Corazon de Ora or de Oro, I'm probably butchering that. Life Won't Wait, Hooligans, really sounding different, but they don't sound like they're written by a different band. It just sounds like a band that's really trying to lean into ska in a very genuine way, not because it's popular from 96 onwards, but because they have, I think, a really good knack for doing it basically as good as it can get.
Everything you said, bang on. For me, Life Won't Wait is the pinnacle of Rancid. I wish they would have kept on with exploring all this sort of stuff. I feel like they pushed themselves on this album. I feel like the recording is phenomenal. I've said it before and I've heard it mentioned too. It's their Sandinista. Everything they were working towards culminated in one great album.
For sure. And I started looking into some of the production side and like, how did you pull all this together, and even if you look at the people that have appearing on the album, like Billy Joe Armstrong's on it, Dickie Barrett's on it, Dave Hilliard's on it, the guy from like Gwen Stefani's brother, who started No Doubt and then left the band before they got big, plays piano on one of the songs. There's about 40 different guest musicians. They recorded it all over the U.S. in about 7 or 8 different studios. Recorded in Jamaica as well. They recorded 50 songs for this album.
Really?
Yeah, and cut it down. I think it's 18 or 19 tracks in the end. But they wrote so much material. They worked in like some really big major studios, like Energy, and I think Sun City was the other one. And then even from like the engineers and producers and engineers and mixers that they had working on it, like guys that have like 300 Grammy Award kind of stuff. Like there's some really heavy hitters that help pull all of this together. And like you said, I think it is their best complete album. I think they have songs that are better on other albums, but from a start to finish, this is, I think, the most complete thing that Rancid or Tim Armstrong have done. And Tim and Lars actually produced the album, so incredible like vision to sort of help get it all together. This is the album I come back to the most when it comes to Rancid.
I think you nailed everything that I would say about it. I always said it's my favorite one. Everything about it's perfect. What song did you end up going with?
So I kind of had a few different thoughts on this one. Ended up going with Hooligans. I think it sort of epitomizes the album the best. It's very much a Rancid song, but it's not what you would hear on Let's Go. It's not Up Ivy. It's not jumping on a third wave ska bandwagon, a scandwagon. It's
I'm gonna set my Skaterni after you.
It's just amazingly well-written music that hits beautifully.
Great pick, Justin. Hands down, like one of my favorite albums of all time. So kudos to you for picking it. So my first album is Lagwagon, Let's Talk About Feelings, which is the 5th full-length album by Lagwagon. I remember when this came out thinking that Lagwagon was taking a giant step forward, which I mean, isn't wrong entirely, but it's not like they changed their sound or anything. But when it came out, I felt like they had completely changed their sound. But going back, it doesn't sound that way. What is different is that the songwriting seemed just a little bit stronger. Specifically lyric-wise, it was darker and more personal than anything Lagwagon had done. And I think that made it sound so different than the previous Lagwagon albums. For the first time, they didn't just sound like a fat record band, in my opinion. I might get some flack for that, but that's just how I felt. The album flows front to back. A couple of interesting things that I learned doing some research on this album, and that'll probably lose me some punk points. I never knew that Everything Turns Gray was an Agent Orange cover. Did you know that?
I did not. That's one of my favorite Lagwagon songs.
This one's funny because I stumbled upon it on a skate video, and I heard the song and I'm like, why do I know this song? And I knew the lyrics and I knew the beat, but I'm like, this isn't the way I remember it. And then I'm like, oh fuck, it's a Lagwagon song. So then I had to do some research and found out that Agent Orange originally did that song, but that song sounds so much like a Lagwagon song on the album that I would have never guessed. But the big thing I found out is that the song May 16th is about not being invited to a friend's wedding. Did you know that? I didn't. I had no clue.
Are these the feelings that they're talking about on the album? Is it all about, like, maybe I should write a song about being cut from a floor hockey team?
It's basically the same thing. Yeah, I guess he was like, there was a falling out with the spouse or something and Joey, so he didn't get to go to the wedding, but he was near the wedding, so he could hear the party, but he was at home or something like that. It's just funny because that's the song that I automatically think of when I think of this album, and maybe because it was on Tony Hawk too, which seems to be a theme for our episodes lately. But yeah, that's sort of, it's just one of my favorite Lagwagon albums. I'm not sure if it's my favorite Lagwagon album, but it might be. Probably has some of their best songs.
Yeah, and I think you're right about just it's a change for the band, and it's they lost that franticness about them, where everything was so pointed and abrupt and like tons of staccato stuff, and their drummer's incredible, but at times it was just dude, just keep the beat for a couple phrases. Like, just, you don't need to change it up all the time. And I think the band just sort of mellowed out a little bit, and that actually made them like stronger and more musical and just more sort of like connected.
And again, like the lyric content is so different than, let's say, the stuff off Duh, which I guess you do expect as people get older, right? Like you write more deep things. And I would assume when they were writing this, they're probably getting into their mid-20s, probably, if not pushing 30. I don't know what their ages are, but your life is different at that time than 19 writing song. One thing I would recommend is, and I don't normally recommend this thing, is if you're going to pick this up for the first time, pick up the reissue remasters, because I think they're actually better. Like, I don't know if you would agree, Justin, but I think the reissue remasters better.
Well, spoiler alert, I'm going to touch on it in one of my next picks. But yeah, I think the remasters on a lot of these albums, like, it just sort of brings, like, in all fairness to these bands, they were doing the best they could with the money they had. Like, they're not, yes, they're putting out records on Epitaph or Fat or, Nitro or whatever the label is, but these aren't huge labels. They're still working with smaller studios. They're not, it's not Warner and BMG kind of music. So.
That's fair. Also, they do you get the cover of Bring on the Dancing Horses, which is fantastic. And I think up until this was only on that or some compilation about, maybe before, it was on Before You Were Punk too, I believe. And it's a fantastic cover.
Lagwagon always does good covers.
Yeah, they are great at it. So yeah, the song I ended up going with was May 16th, just because, like you said, I think that's the first thing you think of with this album. So
great pick. All right, first picks for 1998. Rancid off the album Life Won't Wait. The song is Hooligans.
And Lagwagon, May 16th off Let's Talk About Feelings.
Rancid. Tell them. Yeah! Here's a new face of rock and roll. Let's all fight it toe to toe. Hard times go. Yeah, the hard times go. When I say, come on. Well, all the hooligans and good boys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. Well, all the hooligans and good boys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. One man's position brings another's opposition completely. I'm bound down on the flats where the seaside meets my lonely old town. Where all the rudies and scares, where they're out on the street making their way on the grill. Between the violence and sex, they smash and they wreck for something to live. Well, all the hooligans and good boys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. All the hooligans and good boys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. Sometimes you know there's no place to go but to a love life of crime. Yeah, but it's so wrong to steal someone's very last meal to profit up a dime. Young Capone and craze, well, they end up in jails gone slinging cowboys. Well, you took a bite out of the apple, a decision that got you there, boy. Well, hooligans and footboys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. Well, hooligans and footboys know one thing for sure. Sky's been stricken on their face. Hooligans and good boys. I don't want no racial hatred.
jumping back into it, number 2 pick coming up from the Santa Barbara area. The band is the Mad Caddies. The album is Duck and Cover. This came out in August of 1998. So we're full swing into summer mode. And what a great album for this, for that not just time of year, but time in our lives. I really like this album. Like, it blew me away how much tighter and more sophisticated it sounded than quality softcore. And like, yes, we're sort of in the peak of punk ska, and there's so many bands and the sound is really big, but I feel like the Mad Caddies they don't sound like a punk ska band. They sound like a band with a whole bunch of crazy ideas, and like, let's write like a weird mariachi style breakdown, and let's really let the horns drive this song. And it wasn't just about playing like fast music and then throwing in some upstrokes and then letting the horns like beep and boop a little bit, like that's what horns do. Play those horns like a motherfucking riot.
Just cutting you off there. One of the things I thought of, and maybe it's not true, but I felt like their horn players were more musically trained than maybe like some of the other ones in other ska bands. Like, I felt like they were maybe came from jazz backgrounds rather than, let's say, like, oh, I played trumpet in band in high school, so I can join your band.
100%. Yeah, I think actually the sort of breakdown of the musicianship in this band is probably way better than they really get credit for. And they all take turns in different songs or in different parts of the song on like really taking that lead. There's times where they're really driven by like bass and drums. There's times where it's the horns are sort of the standouts. But there's no like, sort of like free riding slouch musicians in the band. And I think even vocally, like Chuck was his name, right?
Yeah, it's Chuck.
Yeah. Like, I think he's got a phenomenal voice. Like, it's like, it fits the vibe so well. And I think it's such a great album. I think it's the best all originals Mad Caddies album. I do really like
Wow.
Rocksteady. I think they do such a good job on like the vast majority of the covers that they did there that sound like Mad Caddies songs and not just a ska cover of a punk song.
Interesting. I wouldn't pick this as my favorite Caddies one, but it's good. It's way better than the first one.
Yeah. Are you a Rock the Plank guy?
No,
I know you like a good pirate song.
I do like a good pirate song. No, I can't think of the cover or the album name. I think it's called Just One More, like the bluish kind of cover.
Oh yeah, okay.
That would be mine. But I think that they really leaned into like the horn section on that one too, so I could see why people maybe wouldn't like that one as much. It was way less punk.
Both great albums, and I think that one, like "Drinking for 11," is like my favorite Mad Caddy song, and that's on that album. And yeah, there's I don't know, they're all in all just a great band. And when this album came out in 1998, it was an instant yes for me, and I still will go back and listen to it. And I don't do that with a lot of ska from that time.
Good choice. What song did you end up going with?
The song I went with, I sort of bounced around a lot on this one, and I ended up going with the second track on the album, which is "The Gentleman."
That is a great song. Good choice, Justin. Good choice. My pick is going to be a little bit different. It doesn't really blend with the ska thing. It's in fact the exact opposite. It's a little bit more somber. The band is Knapsack. The album is This Conversation Is Ending Right Now. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but maybe not. I'm not entirely sure of the year, but it would have been around 98 or 99. And we had rented a CD burner to work on our first compilation. So, like, do you remember if this is like, did we record at that shitty studio after 98 or would have been around this time?
I think that was in 1998. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would have been this time or at latest 99. Anyway, we rented the CD burner. It was this giant contraption. It was like before you could put them on computers and stuff. It was like it was huge, like the size of a amp. And I had it for an extra couple weeks or something like that. And we had bought like a pack of CDRs, which were not cheap at the time. I believe they were like $50 a CD, blank CD at the time. But I had like 3 left and I didn't know what to do. So I called my buddy Devin and I said, hey, do you want to just give me a stack of CDs that I can just burn that I might not know anything about? In that stack of albums were the 3 Knapsack albums and a bunch of other ones. But I wasn't smart enough to put albums, just like one album on a CDR. Instead, I was like, tried to fit as much as I could on one CDR. So they were never labeled.
Well, at $50 a CD, like you kind of got to do it.
Yeah. Like, and plus I just wasn't like thinking really. I was like, oh, I just want to own this. Like it was so foreign to think that I could pirate a CD at the time. So the 3 albums ended up on 2 CDRs and unlabeled. So I never knew the actual order of the songs or which songs were on which album. I just knew that they were Knapsack. So for a while there, I had no clue on which Knapsack albums I liked and which Knapsack songs I liked. And they were forever connected and mislabeled in my mind. And this only got more complicated as MP3s became more popular. And I ripped those CDs and put them on my computer and then tried to figure out which songs they were. So it wasn't until years later that I actually purchased all 3 albums and I figured out which ones belonged on which album. But the point is that
So you were one of those LimeWire guys that had like all the information wrong?
Well, for this one, for sure. I was pretty anal about that kind of stuff, but I just, for some reason, I just screwed up here. It was bad with like, and it was forever like just mishmashed in my head. Like I said, it wasn't until I bought the albums like years later, like maybe like 10 years, 12 years later, that I really did figure out which songs belonged on which album. Long-winded story, but the point being is I really love Knapsack and they played such an important part in my life. Some of those songs got me through some really shitty mental times. And while I may not have known what I was specifically listening to on the albums, those songs played over and over in my head. So I figured I couldn't pass putting this on my list. This Conversation is ending right now is their 3rd and final album. It came out in 98. It still holds up to this day. I do think that the majority of their offshoots and other bands do as well, but I always still come back to Knapsack. The song I went with is called Hummingbirds, which has always been a standout on this album or on my double CD that I made.
Your self-made best of double album.
Yeah.
Take that, Billy Joel.
In your face, Billy. Knapsack can do it, so Billy Joel.
Great pick, and I think I think Knapsack's one of those like just between the stuff that they do themselves and then all the other offshoots of bands that are connected to or toured with or grew up with them or came up with them, and like just a great feeder system for so many other important bands.
For sure.
All right. Second picks from the year 1998. Mad Caddies off the album Duck and Cover. The song is The Gentleman.
Knapsack. The song is Hummingbirds off This Conversation is Ending Right Now.
dress and you sang higher, I woke up great today. I'm sad, I'm sick of feeling bad. Far away, crawling over me. Know you by your sound, but hummingbirds are winding down. They're winding, and the rain on the red clay bricks crumble down. Bury this in the safe, cannot catch, failing vision, frigid architect. The ranks are thinning out, they have flaws, they're not detecting now. Measure in degrees the arc of how we fell, and tell them all to go to hell, and take everything. Stars are never right, burning fast tonight. They radiate their dirty light, so I can see falling over me, and I'm not disturbed. Well, there are places I can hide in this world, and the rain on the red clay bricks will crumble down and bury this safe, cannot detect, failing vision, frigid architect. The ranks, they are thinning out, they have flaws, they're not detecting now.
I know we talked a lot about CDs and CD ripping technology. This release bucked that trend entirely and was put out as a cassette, which has made it very hard to find or have any sort of record for. But thankfully, the Calgary Cassette Preservation Society has stepped up to the rescue and has made this available digitally. Pick number 3 from the year 1998 is a local Calgary band called the Everymen. The cassette release is Brian Went Down to Reno. This is apologies to non-Calgary or non-Canadian listeners because this may not hold the same weight for the year, but this was a huge release for me. And like just to hear, what was in our local all ages scene, like one of the more senior, experienced, and like I guess kind of popular bands. They could put out this album or cassette single. I don't know what it was be called, but it was a lot for a local band to do and to be able to put out a release, and then they would go on like little tours and play around and like come back and play an all ages show. And you were like, in my head, I'm like, these guys were huge. In reality, they put out a 7-song, 14-minute cassette in 1998. But that's a lot of work. It's a lot to do. Like, you still have to like figure out how to get a cassette replicated and things printed for it and inserted, and like it would be as take almost the effort of putting out a 30 or 40-minute full-length album. But it's a great record. I think it was done at Sunday Sound with Dave Alcock, who's the drummer, or was the drummer for a number of years with Chicks Dig It, and also a sound engineer here in Calgary. The cassette, I keep calling it the album. I don't know if it qualifies as one at 14
I think it's an album.
minutes.
I'd call it an album.
Sure, that's 7 songs. We'll focus on that part of the equation. It's slightly longer than November Rain. This album is super fun and fast and melodic and poppy. And the 3 guys in the band are beyond talented. It's wild to think that 3 musicians in Calgary could come together, be that talented, and just play on a small stage where like it would cost you like $1 or less to see a show if you brought a can of food with you, and you got to see like these incredible musicians. And even in a few years after this, to be able to play with them. I love the Everymen. Their drummer Casey was a huge inspiration for me as a drummer, and this album was just like not skate punk, not pop punk, not it's not a rock album. They're not grunge. They're just like a nice, fun, poppy, punk-inspired band that were awesome to see live. And I love that I got to be able to see them a lot over the few years that they were together in Calgary.
And one note for listeners who might not know anything about the Everymen is Casey, the drummer of the Everymen, is now the drummer of Belvedere, who are probably a lot more popular outside of Calgary circles. So yeah, that's a great album. They were definitely one of the bands I always looked forward to seeing at all ages shows, and they were very involved in the scene and important in cultivating an all ages scene. Like Casey did sound for a lot of the shows, and if not most of them. They were always around, and they were involved in the collectives and stuff like that. And Casey's studio, once he started recording, was made it accessible for a lot of bands who couldn't afford to put out a good recording for a bit there. So
yeah, for sure. That's a great point. I think they really did a lot to grow the local music scene and make it open and available to new bands that were starting out. I think they were really like genuinely great guys who were open to helping new musicians like I would have been at the time sort of find their stride. So yeah, the Everymen. Brian went down to Reno, a cassette release from 1998. And the song I chose for this one is Yuppie War Anthem.
that is such a good song. I think that's maybe their best song.
15 Minutes is always the one I come back to just because it's so fun. And I think it's on another release, but it's not on this one.
Well, I'm going to stick with some CanCon, not CalCon, but CanCon. But in a way, it always felt like CalCon to me, just because of their closeness to the city. The band is the Bonaduces. The album is Democracy of Sleep. The Bonaduces are from Winnipeg. I first fell in love with them after I saw them play with your band in what I think is your very first show. And the Bonaduces played with, I believe you guys were called Fleet of Foot at the time, not Johnny Unitas yet.
That's correct. It was Fleet of Foot, and it was with Nave and the Bonaduces.
And I believe there's another Winnipeg band that was on that too, maybe. I can't recall. Democracy of Sleep is the Bonaduces' last full-length album. If you lived in Western Canada in the 90s or part of any sort of local music scene, you probably knew the Bonaduces and their blend of pop, punk, emo, and indie rock that seemed just a little bit ahead of the curve with the bands that were about to explode on the mainstream, bands like Saves the Day and the whole Midwest pop punk emo scene. I felt like these guys could fit in with them, but they were like maybe too isolated in Winnipeg to get noticed, and just a little bit before all those bands. One interesting thing I read about them came from John K. Sampson of Weaker Thans. He said in an interview about the Bonaduces, "For me, the culmination of it all was the Bonaduces. I felt that band really lifted the genre to a whole new height. Doug's tone and scope of his lyrics provided a template for me and some other people to try and write songs that I'm still trying to write. I feel like the Bonaduces were really a product of the Winnipeg scene, and I feel that they are still the kind of high water mark for that whole time and period. That's some high praise from someone that I think is fairly well respected outside of Canada even. So
For sure.
But yeah, I've always just really liked them. They were great to see live, like so much energy. I still go back to their albums, really like them a lot. And sometimes I forget how spoiled we were out west with all those bands that were forced to kind of play that Winnipeg to Vancouver like scene. We did get some great bands. Like we did get to see Propaganda a lot. We got to see I Spy. We got to see like Swallowing Shit and like the Bonaduces and Bell. Oh, Bell is the other band that was on that bill.
Oh, were they on that bill too? Yeah, they absolutely were.
And like just in general,
I imagine like that would have been 11 people crammed into like probably like a like an '83 Chevy van.
But yeah, we were given a little bit of access to all those G7 bands that maybe when I hear about now, I'm like, people are like, well, I never really got to see Propaganda. Like they came through on like a big fat records tour, and that was about it. Where we saw them like in basement shows. Well, not basement shows, but like community hall shows.
Kind of local hall, yeah.
And then the same is true with like bands out west that came this way. Usually it was a knock that we were geographically locked away. But it did work to our advantage for certain things, and maybe cultivating these music scenes too in some ways. Anyway, if the Bonaduces were good enough for John K. Sampson, you should probably give them a listen. And the song I pick is called Bee Sting Necklace.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of like good memories of being in that show, and they were like the nicest guys. Like they're just like.
Don't say that, because Coop's going to hear that, and he's going to be all.
he
doesn't probably.
Great pick, Mike. And yeah, just the bands that got me into music and playing live music and feeling like I could actually, make a go of this. It didn't pan out in the end. I think I got a bad record deal that really stifled my career.
Hey, I'm still making money. I'm getting those residual checks from
still waiting for those
from
checks.
that snowboarding video that had the song on there. Every like 10 years, I get 10 cents.
I hope someone's hand is cramping signing those checks.
Totally. Good Seinfeld reference. Full
Thank
circle.
you. Third picks from the year 1998. The Everymen, Brian Went Down to Reno is the cassette release, and the song is Yuppie War Anthem.
Bonaduces, Bee Sting Necklace off Democracy of Sleep.
If I take too long to deal with what's been said, it's just that I have taken it to conclusions in my head. When every kid in class has found the guts to ask what they can do to help you, I guess I must have been called your best friend standing side each other. And if we're back outside and I've overcome the stress, 10 feet from a home, you're barefoot in a sleeveless dress. If you were only wrapped in a black jacket and welder's mask, I could relax, but that's so stupid to expect. So we make this to protect in other ways. Three pills and a locket around your neck. Three pills and a locket around your neck. Three pills and a locket around your neck. So if I make amends, if I cease to be a rusty mouth companion to your new mortality, we're only 12 years old. It's hard to be so bold about these things, but I'm listening. So tell me what you need from me, and I'll lose my bravery to match your own. Three pills and a locket around your neck. Three pills and a locket around your neck. Three pills and a locket around your neck.
Okay, fourth picks from 1998. This one will, of course, be full of controversy based on the ongoing debates in the chat that, of course, resulted in Excel spreadsheets and other ways of trying to decipher which is, in fact, the best Strung Out album. In my opinion, it's this one right here. It came out on May 5th, 1998 on Fat Records, of course. The band is Strung Out. The album is Twisted by Design. This one was like just about everything that came out around this time, produced by Ryan Green. But I think this one really finds the sweet spot in the continuum of Strung Out, not just songwriting, but more specifically like production. They were always like sort of a more polished band on Fat Records and had more of that kind of big band sound to them. But I feel this one's got it's got more polish than Suburban does, but it didn't go like the full digital route that like American Paradox and the future Strung Out releases have, where they were almost overproduced. And I know, Mike, you and I differ on this, and I know you tend to like things a little bit more raw and authentic, and I don't shy away from a well-produced or polished album. But this one, I think, finds a sweet spot right in the middle of the two. And I think the songwriting is really solid on this one, which probably speaks a lot to Jim Cherry and his contributions to Strung Out. This was the last album he did with Strung Out, and then when you see what he did with Zero Down after that, I think he carried a lot of what the Strung Out sound of Suburban and Twisted by Design have. So there's sort of like a piece after this album that goes missing, and I'm not going to say that Strung Out, haven't been the same since, but there's something that Jim brought to that band that really created the sound that made them who they were.
That's a really good point, and we've discussed Strung Out in nauseum probably on this podcast, which is really funny. I don't know why it always comes up. And something we've never brought up is Jim's contribution to these two albums, and maybe that's why they are the two that are the best.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's other good Strung Out albums. They have a lot of really good songs in future releases. But when it comes down to what's the most, the albums we're going to debate the most between them, it's definitely these two.
So while we're on the topic of that, have you listened to the new album? Do you like the new Strung Out album?
It made me immediately go back and listen to Twisted by Design.
That's cool. I mean, that's fair. Because you just were like, I'd rather listen to Twisted by Design, or because you were like, there's parts of it that are...
No, I think I was maybe expecting something. I don't know what I was expecting, but I probably owe it a better listen than I gave it, and not just being like, well, this doesn't sound like Too Close to See, so I would rather just go listen to that. But yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that album.
Yeah. First listen of it, I was like, oh, it's a good Strung Out album. The more and more I listened to it, the more I liked it. I still don't know about the recording, actually. I can't tell if the recording made it better or worse, but I feel like they addressed some of that digitalization that you mentioned and tried to remove some of it on this one. And it sounded a little bit more like, not like Twisted, but what's the one that's right after Twisted, like the EP or whatever, like the...
Yeah, it was basically the pre-release to American Paradox.
Yeah, I can't think of it. What's called now?
No, it's not Elements.
Elements, yeah.
That was the...
No, it's Elements.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
To me, it sounds a lot like Elements. Like if they would have stuck with that sound rather than trying to go... I feel like for a bit there, they were like, they leaned into being a metal band more. Not that I'm against it. Like you nailed it. They have good songs on all those albums, but nothing ever felt the same after Twisted, in my opinion. I kind of like this album. I don't know if it's like gonna stick with me, but it's a lot better than I thought it was gonna be. And I found like the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. But again, it'll never be Twisted by Design, and because that again is one of my favorite albums, especially from this era.
Yeah, I like I said, I owe it a better listen, so I will at least give it that. Back to Twisted by Design, I think just right from the get-go, like Too Close to See is such a great opening track for a record. Like it just hits, it's fast and melodic. But this is, I think, the big difference with Strung Out versus a lot of bands that may have been more on like that punk metal hybrid, is that like the vocals with Strung Out are so crisp and clear in these recordings. And like, despite how many words, Jason Cruz can jam into a sentence or a phrase, you can hear everything like perfectly. Like it's just super easy to like sing along to. They were interesting live because I've saw them in this era live, I don't know, 6 or 8 times. And you never knew what you were going to get.
6 or 8, but not 7.
Sorry?
6 or 8, but not 7.
6 to 8 times. Maybe it was 7. There's times where like their live performance was amazing, and then other times where I'm like, these guys sound like they've never practiced together. We talked a little bit earlier about remasters too, and I think the remaster on this one is good. Like it cleans it up a little bit, but I don't think there was much to do to begin with. Suburban's remaster is like a dramatically different album.
Yeah, I think we discussed it last time. I don't like the remaster on Suburban. This one's not as drastic, so it doesn't really... I don't know if it moved the needle either way for me on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A bit of a downer note, like following the Jim Cherry sort of saga. Like he leaves Strung Out after this album, starts Zero Down. That Zero Down album I think came out in 99 or 2000, and it's really good. But then Jim died a couple of years after that, and it was from not an opioid overdose, but just like the complications of coming clean.
Oh. I always thought it was an OD, but that also makes sense. Like
no, it was he was sober when it happened, but I was listening to a podcast where his wife was talking about it, and she was just like, it's like a drug that never leaves you, and as you're getting clean, and no matter how long, like it just destroys your insides, and like he died of like massive heart complications The song I did choose off the album is Matchbook. It's the closer on the album, the last track. And from the first time I heard it until this day, this is one of my favorite songs of all time. All genres, all bands, whatever you want to call it. I think it's like just one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. So that's the one I picked.
It might be one of the best album closers, specifically in punk rock. It would be up there for sure for an album closer, if not the best one.
Yeah. And if I take a quick look at my time right here, Strung Out is playing in Calgary tonight, and they're probably literally playing that song right now, wherever the show is. That was pick number 4, Mike. On to you.
Well, I'm going to bring some more CanCon into the lexicon here. The band I picked is Grade. The album is Separate the Magnets. Separate the Magnets is Grade's second full-length album. I'm not sure if you'd heard their first one before, but it was a giant jump in production. I always liked the first album, but Separate the Magnets is like infinitely better. It's one of those albums that I feel like our friends were into, so you almost felt like you had to get into Grade just because you would hear how great Grade was and how like they were creating this sound that was different. And at the time I was starting to explore more hardcore and emo for sure. One thing I liked about Grade is even with the high production value on this and the future albums, I felt like they took the energy and emotion of a basement or community hall show and somehow recorded it properly without it sounding like it was recorded in a basement. Or like it felt like when you listen to these Grade albums, it feels like it's a live show, and it's like it just always resonated with me. Like you could just feel the emotion and the anger and like everything about it, and somehow it was still palatable for the average ear, which I don't know, does that make sense to you? Like that they were a hardcore band, but they were like,
I think
like you could play that for somebody that didn't like that kind of music and they'd be like, oh, I get it, I like this band.
Well, I played it for a lot of people that didn't like that kind of music, and they were like, what is wrong with you? But I know what you mean, and I think probably what Grade brought like to the music scene is that perfect balance of raw emotion, screaming vocals, but they were super melodic, and it was like that ability to be heavy and melodic that I think was a big game changer, because there was a lot of hardcore bands where the lead singer usually like with the mic cord like wrapped around his fist and just screaming, right? And these super heavy breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. There's no melody there. It was just like kind of how heavy can we make this? Grade dialed that back to a point where like they brought more melody, they brought more harmony, they brought, I guess, just a softening to the hardcore that made it, I think, a lot easier for people to listen to that weren't into the
yeah, like I'd argue
stuff.
without Grade there's no Alexis on Fire.
There's not a lot of bands without Grade.
So they have this spot, especially for Canadians, I think, as this like they're on a pedestal of that kind of sound. But there's also this weird like people hate them too, which I find is interesting. There's like a weird love-hate relationship with Grade. Separate the Magnets is an awesome album, and the song I picked is Conceptualizing Theories in Motion.
Yeah, what a non-convoluted song title.
Especially that genre is just so full of like arrogance.
It's so fun.
Like the hubris in those bands is just hilarious.
Yeah. Is this this album doesn't have the Panama cover on
the Panama cover it was I think it's on a comp
like a
thing,
B-sides thing, wasn't
like
it?
that Victory put out maybe, and then it was on like they did release like a album with like some of their older stuff and some like B-sides and things like that and covers.
Yeah, I think it was in my list for the episode ages ago on
it's a great cover.
Best covers. Yeah, it's so good. Even despite the super cheesy live audience.
I love that.
Piped into it. Yeah. If I could be like, if there was like you get one shot in life to like whatever it is, like take a pill or wave a magic wand and you can sing one song flawlessly in karaoke, I would sing Grade's cover of Panama.
That's an interesting thought. I don't know what I would do, but I would like to see you sing Grade's version of Panama. And I hate karaoke.
Yeah, and like they would, you would never. So do I. But that would be my.
Can I just get you drunk and watch you try?
There's not enough alcohol in the world to make that.
I think I can make it happen.
Fourth picks from the year 1998, Strung Out with their pinnacle and best ever release, Twisted by Design. The song I chose was Matchbook.
Grade, conceptualizing theories in motion off Separate the Magnets.
numbness or weakness in the wrist, hands, especially during sleep.
Well, we stumbled our way through another podcast. Thanks to the listener for listening to this one. Now that we have stats on our website, I'm actually impressed at how many people listen to us babble. I honestly would have guessed way less. I think we'll probably have to put more effort into this, or maybe not. But thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the WhatsApp group for the always interesting conversations about our episodes and more. Thank you to the listeners who sent in lists. We love checking them out. And especially with this season's theme, it's been extra interesting. It's crazy to see the overlaps and also see stuff that we may have missed. I've had a few people reach out about putting off-brand stuff on their lists. Please send those in too. If that's what you're into that year, we aren't here to shame anyone. I would only shame Nate, and that's just because he deserves it. Justin, thank you for joining me again and helping out. It's been awesome doing this with you. I hope you keep sticking around. It's been a lot of fun hanging out and reminiscing and talking about music. Listeners, if you remember, give us a nice rating on whatever streaming service you check us out on. Apparently that helps with stuff. I'm not sure what it helps with, but it helps with stuff.
That's with the algorithm.
Yeah, probably. More importantly, if you like our podcast and you know someone else that might, tell them to give a listen, because that to me would go a long way. You can get in touch with us via Instagram or on email. We don't have a webpage yet. I'm working on it, I promise. But yeah, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for listening. It makes doing this way more worth it. I hope you keep listening. And let's get to those final tracks from 1998.
All right. We did it, Mike, down to our last pick off what was just a phenomenal year for punk rock. And I had to, this was either going to be the first one I went with, but I decided to hold it off for the end. In the few episodes that I've done, I've probably spoken with a lot of hyperbole and made outrageous statements about something being the best song ever written, or the best album, or the best this, or the best that.
You did it in this episode.
I did. But everything has come with a caveat of like, this is the best song that is 3 minutes and 13 seconds long. Like it's, they're very specific. This is a more generalized statement, and it's a big one. This is my favorite album of all time. Any genre, any band, any type of music, anything that was ever written. If I could listen to one album for the rest of my life, this is the one. It came out on October 27th, 1998, on Burning Heart Records. The band is from Umeå, Sweden. The band is Refused, and the album is The Shape of Punk to Come. This is the best album I've ever listened to in my entire life, and every time I hear it, it's like hearing it again for the first time. It was recorded at Sound Lab Studios in Oresboro, Sweden. Orebro.
Hey, I'm not the one that lived there. You live
there. Sweden, which is sort of not far from Stockholm, and that's where Millencolin is from, which I thought was interesting. I read a few like sort of production notes on it. The recording did not go well at all. There was a lot of like financial issues. They weren't sure if they were even going to be able to get it out. There's a lot of creative tensions in the band, and that sort of makes sense because shortly after this album came out, they broke up in the middle of a tour. They just called it quits in Atlanta, Georgia. Probably like so many other people have, but for different reasons. I think that's the slogan of Atlanta. It's just like, give up here. the album's the third full length from Refused. The first one, this just might be the truth. I don't know if I've ever really listened to it, and if I have, I probably dismissed it fairly quickly. Their second album, that Songs to Fan the Flames of Discontent, speaking of like very pretentious album titles, I think is actually really good. There's some really good tracks on it. You could see how they were sort of building up to something, but the shape of Punk to Come is like leaps and bounds ahead of anything that band did before, anything that they did after, and anything else to come out of the genre. I think it was so mind-blowingly different. It was like it was from another planet, and it's all over the place. The sort of these like drum and bass breakdowns between songs, the way that the whole album connects together, the mixing of like jazz, and even at some parts like the last track, Tannhauser Drive, has this like very almost like classical music kind of build up to it, and then it just like the last 3 minutes of the song are just like total kick in the teeth. But the entire album, cover to cover, I think is flawless. Every song fits in perfectly. It's an incredible album. The interesting thing is I didn't hear it when it came out, and I don't think a lot of people did. I think it took a little while to get some momentum behind it. So I think it was sometime in 1999, because actually we mentioned him earlier, but our friend Devin, he showed me the video for New Noise, and I was just like, what on earth is this? Like, how is this music even being...
So funny story there, to interrupt you. Devin and me saw that video for the first time together. We were making shirts at his house for our show, and things weren't going well. At the time, Home Depot was open till 4 a.m. So we went to Home Depot to get some supplies, and we were waiting for the stuff on a screen. I can't remember what it's called, but it has to dry before you can burn the thing. So we're waiting there, and we turn on loud, and it came on, and we were just like, what the fuck is this? This is amazing. And then like right away, we were like so into it. Yeah, that's hilarious. I didn't know he showed you it too, but that night,
like
both
I
of us,
remember like
the first time both of us had ever seen it. And it was like maybe 99, actually, I would say.
Yeah, and I think like I read some of the like initial reviews on the album, and like the critic reviews were pretty mediocre. They'd be like, yeah, 3.5 out of 5. And I sort of like took a little bit of momentum to be like, this is not like another release from another band. This isn't, this isn't another, skate punk band, or this isn't a hardcore band. This is just like, they're doing something that is totally different. And I still to this day, like I said, listen to it, and there's parts that I get so excited about to hear. And it comes up in the song that I chose, which is The Deadly Rhythm, which has this incredible like jazz breakdown in it that builds to this like the ending of the song, which is like maybe one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. Like, it's beyond incredible. And then when the band got back together, which would have been sort of like 2013-ish, 2012, 2013.
Yeah, maybe somewhere around there.
Sort of touring
kind of right
again.
when we started our podcast. I don't remember what year, but I know that.
Yeah, well, we would have seen them in
Austin,
which I think was 2013. And before that, we saw them in Calgary.
Yeah, we saw them at Mac
and
Hall.
That was
awesome.
Yeah, unbelievable. One of the best live shows, where much like this album, every note, every chord, every piece of music that is played is done with such intention, and that translated to their live show, 14 years later, where every flicker of a light bulb had a purpose and a reason to be there. Just this album in particular, just flawless. Flawless is the only word I have for it. My favorite album of all time.
So one thing I find interesting about it is, like, again, I feel the same way as you do. Like, I think this album is like super influential. It changed how I thought about music. It still feels like I'm listening to a new album every time I listen to it. Over the last few years, maybe the last 5 or 6, it's weird. There's like this weird backlash against it online, and like where people like to shit on it. And I think it's like just like that hipster rhetoric, like, I don't want to like something that, or maybe like people like the mystique of them breaking up when they have this giant album, and then like they don't exist
like right at their peak. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, I just think that's a weird thing. Again, I think you nailed the complexity and the awesomeness of this album. So good job, Justin. Great pick. I'm glad you picked it. I would have definitely put it on my list had you not picked it. This is a band that I've talked about a lot on the podcast. It's a band I love. I'm not sure if our listeners do love them as much as I do, but they're just one of those bands that I can't get enough of. The band is Murder City Devils. The album is Empty Bottles and Broken Hearts. 1, Murder City Devils might be one of the best band names of all time.
100%.
2, they're one of the bands that have the best aesthetics, like their logo, their album art, their mystique at shows. Everything about them is just really fucking cool. I'm jealous that they're that cool. And this album, right out of the gates, hits you so hard with the first track, I Want a Lot Now. And then it does not stop for the rest of the album. It's in your face, it's angry, it's dark, and yet somehow it makes you want to dance like a Phil Spector produced album. I know that's a weird connection, but they're like so gritty and garagey and punk rocky, but they still have this like undertone to them that sounds like it could be like a weird Phil Spector album. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but that's how I feel about the Murder City Devils. And another thing, much like the Grade thing, when you listen to a Murder City Devils album, it sounds like it's a live album without the shittiness of live albums. Because I hate live albums. There's not too many live albums I'll ever listen to. But Murder City Devils capture a live album sound without being a live album. Just, yeah, I love all their albums. This is another one of their great ones. The song I went with is I Want a Lot Now, because I said it just opens up the album and it just gets going right away. I don't know what else I could say about that, except that I really want to see them live, and I've never done that. And one of these days I will, because they seem to be playing shows again here and there. And yeah, that's it. The Murder City Devils, Empty Bottles, Broken Hearts, and the songs I Want a Lot Now. Justin, is that a wrap on 98? Do you have anything else to say about 1998? Do you want to talk more about Windows 98?
I don't. No, it was a big year for us. It was a huge year for music, and I'm glad I got to talk about it with you for the last little bit here. And thanks to everyone for listening. The fifth and final picks for the year 1998, Refused off the album The Shape of Punk to Come. The song is The Deadly Rhythm.
Murder City Devils, I Want a Lot Now off Empty Bottles and Broken Hearts. Thanks for listening. Stay cool and be excellent to each other.
Prosperity and
Oh, there it is there. That's a good way to start. Way to start, Mike. Hi, welcome to the High Fives podcast. Oh, fuck. How did I blow that? It's like 100 episodes. Okay.
Haven't we had this conversation before? You think?